Welcome to After the Arena, presented by Under Armour. I'm Victoria Arlen alongside Jason Fitz and Skubie Mageza. We just finished watching episode 6 of Man of the Arena, and we're here to break it all down with you. So, guys, what did you think? First thoughts on tonight's episode of Man in the Arena.
I thought tonight's episode was going to be one of the more significant and I think one of the more rewatchable episodes because the controversy around Deflategate, but also because of the Super Bowl that people will talk about for the rest of time and the way that it ended. I mean, there were so many different factors in this episode. This was the one I was the most curious to see. In some ways, it lived up to my expectations. In some ways, I think it left a little bit of meat on the table. We'll get into that. But, there was some good and bad to it in my mind.
I had a feeling you would say that as a non-Pats fan. Watching it, I was like, Fitz is probably going to have a lot to say. But this episode, first off, me, it was the first one where I could actually remember it more because it was so recent and I actually lived through this. And during this era of the Patriots, I was in Foxborough covering the Pats with Fox 25. So I was in the locker room, I was at the games, and I remember a lot of these moments.
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm all about like that journey. And I feel like this was another journey we went on with Brady, and we saw him in a completely different light. So in 2014, Brady was in his 14th season and had not won a Super Bowl in 10 years. That's a whole decade. That's a long time. And his last 2 Super Bowl performances had resulted in losses. And many started to think that Brady and the Pats era and the dynasty was over. And so the Patriots even drafted QB Jimmy Garoppolo in the 2014 draft, signaling that the team was looking to the future and Brady might not be involved. And still, after a rough start to the season, a rejuvenated Brady and the team finished the season 12-4 and won Super Bowl 49. So this felt like the revival of Tom Brady and the 10-year journey to reach back to the top. Do you think that was the case, Skubie?
Yeah, I think this was that point in Tom Brady's career where he was starting to kind of reach his peak. And this is when they even realized more how hard it is to win, because at the beginning of the episode, that's really when they both, him and Vince Wilfork. I love how they brought Vince Wilfork in this, and he looks great, by the way.
Yeah.
He said his first year he won it, and it was kind of like, oh, okay, I'm gonna win this every year. And then year after year after year, they lose. And now they've gained this appreciation for being a winner, for being a championship team, because they've continued to fall short. So this is definitely the beginning of Brady's peak. And also, I remember as a Pats fan, you brought up Jimmy Garoppolo getting drafted. We almost thought to ourselves, man, like we better start looking to the future. Is it time for Brady? We're thinking he has a couple more years left, but to see Brady say in this episode how he's like, I felt like I was going up. I felt like I was getting better. I felt like I understood how to train, how to eat, and all that. So it was definitely interesting to see them, the whole growth of Tom Brady in this episode.
I agree.
I think there's a couple of things here with the growth. One, I go back to what he said at the very beginning when they had won Super Bowls and he was looking around saying, man, like, this is it? Like, it can't just be this. Like, I think in the beginning, it was so easy for him. And then the struggle was real for a long time. You get back to the mountain, top of the mountain, I should say. I think at that point, it either like fires your soul to want to do more, or then you go out on your own terms. Like, it's a very different thing. And I'll use a music analogy because of my background. But like, it's funny. I've got a couple of buddies in the Backstreet Boys, and the Backstreet Boys had a huge run in the 90s, early 2000s. Yeah, well, they had that huge run. There you go. And then they had a really long gap. And then they put out a record that I think about 2 years ago, DNA, went to #1. And it was their first #1 in a long time. And it was funny talking to the guys afterwards, because some of them were like, man, this is the way you go out. Like, this is it. But some of them were like, no, we just restarted for a new era. And I think that's what hit with me watching Tom. Was like, he's one of those guys that like, all right, so what now? What? We got this next thing. But I don't want to gloss over, as we talk about like this chapter of the Patriots. You mentioned Vince Wilfork, who, yes, does look like he could be a model at this point. Good on him. When you watch some pictures of him before, the footage of him before to now. But the other thing is, this is not the first time, guys. We've watched one of these episodes where we've heard from a defensive player that has been a louder presence in the room than Brady. And I think that's so important. Like, again, to take a Patriots takeaway, not just a Brady takeaway, but a Patriots takeaway. Like, Vince was adamant that his voice was louder than Tom's at times, and the defensive players wanted to hear from him because he tackles people. And I kept thinking, and he credited the Brewskis of the world and the Rodney Harrisons of the world that taught him how to be a leader. And it's just a reminder that for a lot of these guys, culture is generational and it's passed down. Like, we keep looking at franchises in today's NFL and saying, how do you become the next Patriots? Well, we talked about an episode a while ago, like getting the buy-in from all 53. What we see is that buy-in continues because they get the right guys that are willing to hear the message in the right way. I looked at this and thought, man, yet again, holy cow, I'm seeing a defensive player that steps up and says, no, once I got that C on my jersey, there was a responsibility, and I'm going to go into that Super Bowl and I'm going to win the damn thing. And like that really hit me because I know this is all about Brady, but I keep looking at the rest of the Patriots locker room saying, I'm not sure we're given enough assist credit here. Like, if Brady is Karl Malone, then the rest of the locker room has been John Stockton a bunch of times. That's an old man NBA reference. Kids, go look it up.
I agree with you, Fitz. I feel like yes, we're talking about Brady, but the Patriots, there was so much. It's like a good chili. You know what I mean? With all the right, I love chili. It's like all the right ingredients and everybody contributed. So yeah.
So can I even tell you, I have won multiple chili competitions. So whenever you want to come over and get in that, like, yeah, I got that chili.
And Backstreet Boys, it's happening, Fitz.
Don't tempt us with good chili and Backstreet.
Yeah, chili and Backstreet Boys, and I'm a happy little human. But I think, we have to keep talking focus, because once I get chili on my brain, it's like next level. But I think it's such a bigger picture. It's a bigger pot that's been passed down. It's that recipe that's been passed down. And this was a revival on many, many levels. And for Pats fans, for not Pats fans, people were kind of like, oh, the Patriots. And I think for Brady, it got him back, it got him back to the front of the line where it was like, okay, this guy's still legit. And as much as it was this, comeback essentially, 10 years in the making, it came with controversy, as, most things kind of do when it comes to winning and stuff. And, after beating the Colts in the AFC Championship game, the Deflategate scandal surfaced, alleging that Brady had ordered footballs to be deflated during the game. And once again, the Patriots were being labeled cheaters, reminiscent of the 2007 Spygate scandal that we spoke about. And so, at a press conference, Brady had said, I didn't alter the ball in any way. But we know the NFL would later investigate, punish Brady and the team, even though no one could say for sure if Deflategate actually happened and if Brady was responsible. So do you guys think this was a case of people trying to take down the Pats and their legacy, or was there truth in your eyes to the allegations?
So this is the funny thing to me. If you go back and you read some of the articles that were being written at the time, even through ESPN.com, there was a large group of Patriots fans that felt like the league had it out for the Patriots. There was an equally large group of fans that felt that the league was protecting the Patriots because Tom Brady was such a huge part of the league and sold so much merch for the league that they didn't want their media darling cash cow to take a fall here. I think the problem, and I'll say this again, because I'm not going to be anything other than real with everybody on these shows. I think this was a soft part of this documentary. I think it's soft that we didn't hear from the NFL. I think that we only heard one side of the story, and we didn't hear from any of the writers that were involved from ESPN, any of the writers that were involved from NFL.com that were part of covering this story. That being said, whether Deflategate, like let's understand what Deflategate was. Deflated footballs was supposed to be this much of a penalty. The reason there was a bigger penalty is you got to go back to Spygate, and that's why I think it was important that the previous episode also didn't give a lot of talk to Spygate. The moments here, it wasn't one, it was the combination of two, and it wasn't one investigation, it was the combination of two. They were harder on Deflategate, and they had acknowledged it at the time because of Spygate. And I think the documentary sort of just glossed over all of that. And the fact that Brady laughed about it on air the next day, like, you can't have both ways here, because Vince Wilfork flat out said, we heard everything everybody was saying. And Brady mentioned several times in this show, like, oh no, we hear at ESPN telling us we're done. You knew the minute you laughed on air that you just created a soundbite. So don't blame us for covering the soundbite that you just knowingly created, and then use the soundbite you knowingly created as ammunition for why everybody's against you. I felt like we got one very personal side. And like they say all the time, there's three sides to every story. There's one side, the other side, and the truth. And I think this episode could have given us much more on Deflategate.
Agreed.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Fitz, but then at the same time, I'm like, what do you expect? When your side of the story, you feel like your side is the truth, then you're going to tell your side of the story as the truth. And as Pats fans, we felt as if the NFL was coming for Brady. That Deflategate game, I was at that Indy game. I remember that. And we can talk about Deflategate and actual science, bringing air out of those balls, and people forget about Deflategate. Those deflated balls were only used during the first half. The second half is when the Patriots started to kick their ass, and that's when they brought in a new set of balls. And then the Colts players said themselves that I don't think a deflated ball would have helped us stop somebody crossing that goal line at the end of the day. And it's the same thing, and I bring it up. A couple weeks ago, we saw the Patriots run the ball every single play against the Bills, and you knew it was coming and you still couldn't stop it. What is deflated balls really going to do? And I go back to Spygate and I go back to Deflategate. That team looked at it as, all right, and Vince Wilfork said it himself. Spygate happens, we come back, we respond, we kick y'all ass, and we go 16-0. Deflategate happens. What do? We come back the next year and we win the Super Bowl. So every single time the NFL tries to say that the Patriots are cheating, it's because their excellence is so damn unbelievable that they're like, they have to be doing something that's helping them win these games.
But wait a minute, like
something. And as
but both can be true.
Both can be true.
But both can be true, guys.
Exactly.
Like, it can be true that the Patriots were the best team in the NFL, and it can be true that the Patriots kicked the snot out of the Colts in the second half. That's a very true and valid argument. It can be true that deflated footballs aren't the reason that they won the game, but that doesn't change the fact that there is a very specific rule. And when if you know that you got caught cheating on your girl, and then you're turning around and a couple of years later you're like, yeah, but this is a minor infraction, she's going to see it differently if it's stacked on top of something. So to me, like, the two things are not, I'm not turning around saying that deflated footballs are the reason that the Patriots won Super Bowls. I'm not going to say that ever. I think that's a stupid take. But if they had footballs that were deflated below the limit, that's a rules violation, and they were held to a higher standard for violating the rules because they were found guilty of spying on opponents. And so, and according to, and although the Patriots have always denied it, OTL is our property outside the lines, and outside the lines did their deep dive into Spygate and found that it was much bigger. And that's why there were owners in the NFL that, if you go back and read the .com articles from Deflategate, there were owners that off the record said, we believe, and they were quoted, they were anonymous, that this was a makeup penalty, that Brady should have been suspended for Spygate, so now they're suspending him for Deflategate. It was never one or the other. It's a combination of both. And it doesn't mean that's why they won Super Bowls. It just means if you're cheating and you get caught cheating, you got to pay a penalty for cheating. Now, they paid too much of a penalty, more than they should, but that's because it wasn't their first offense.
Well, and that's the thing. And it's like you said, it's stacked on top of the other. So it was kind of like, like it's the floodgates opened. Like they're like, this is, it's full. Okay, now it's burst. And now we have to do something about it. And I think too, they say it in Spider-Man, but with great power comes great responsibility. Like these guys were this dynasty who were winning. They were all the talk of the town. With that, there's going to be a microscope on you. There's going to be a microscope on, if you slip up, you will get in trouble. And I think with Spygate, that was kind of a missed opportunity. And then I think with Deflategate, it was kind of like, here you go. And I think even Brady said, he was like, I'm not going to argue with these billion-dollar owners, these billionaire owners. Like, I'm just not. And so I think, there's, like you said, Fitz, there's three sides to every story. And I think it was a compound thing that ended up in a massive, it kind of blew up in everyone's faces, but it was a situation where it
And
was
it was bad for everybody, by the way, guys.
everybody.
Like, it's bad for the NFL to have this, conversation about a dynasty. Like,
Yeah.
that, for anybody that thinks the NFL is out, like, this whole conversation sucks for the NFL, because we should be talking about the Patriots in this entire era. And I think most of us smartly are at this point, the same way that we talked about, for example, the Warriors and how they won, or the Bulls in the 90s and how they won. There should be this nostalgia and oh my God around it. I don't think the NFL ever wanted this to happen.
No, and
Yeah,
it tainted it. It tainted the magic of this. It tainted that Cinderella run, if you will, the Cinderella story. It tainted it because for Pats fans, they're going to try to forget it, but for people who aren't Pats fans, they're going to bring up Spygate and Deflategate as much as possible.
Yeah, and when you look at Spygate and Deflategate, you just have to look at the reaction that the team had following the accusations, because what did they do? I brought it up. What did they do after Spygate, and what did they do after Deflategate when they were really keeping that eye on them for cheating? They won the bowl. They went undefeated. So it's tough for me to look at this, and people want to see it as a reason for their success, but they just responded by winning more.
Yeah, and that just got people angrier. And I feel like
Exactly. That's why people hate him even more.
I got people like, oh great, they won the Super Bowl again. And it's like, oh yeah. And they're like Deflategate, cheaters, like it's like you can't, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. And so, in Super Bowl, speaking of Super Bowl, in Super Bowl 49, the Patriots faced returning Super Bowl champs, the Seattle Seahawks, stacked with Russell Wilson, Marshawn Lynch, and Richard Sherman. And this game literally came down to the final minutes of the fourth quarter. And if you were a Patriots fan, it felt like deja vu all over again when the Seahawks, Jermaine Kearse, made a circus catch after a pass from Wilson, was tipped by Malcolm Butler. And I think everyone thought the Seahawks were going to score and win. And then a few plays later, Butler picks off Wilson at the goal line to seal the game. What was your guys' reaction to this miraculous defensive play? I'm going to start with you, Fitz, because you are not a Pats fan. So let's hear it.
So
I'm a Packers
I
fan,
was,
by the way, so I'm not a Pats fan, but from
I was there. I was at that Super Bowl,
Yeah.
and I had the opportunity to sit next to Greg Cosell, who you can watch on NFL Matchup and NFL Films break things down. Probably the coolest Super Bowl experience of my life. This episode really encapsulated too, because it started showing us the Broncos Patriots Super Bowl. When I was with the band, we played the pregame show right before that Super Bowl, and then we got walked in. So I was 8 rows off the field for that. And then the next year, Greg called me last second and said, I have an extra ticket. Do you want to come? So I literally flew in the morning of the Super Bowl. We were in a holding pattern because of fog. Like, I ran in, like, it was the craziest day I could ever remember. But I was sitting next to Greg for the entirety of the game. And it was funny because watching next to somebody that knows so much film, and he's talking about the little adjustments made by the Seahawks, by Russell Wilson, to be able to find throwing lanes because he is short, things like that. Like, I was getting an education while I was watching the game. And so I was sitting around all of these people that are from NFL Films and NFL Matchup and different analytics type shows. And there was a real conversation about just let the Seahawks score. Let them score, and you'll give Brady back the ball with enough time to see if they can march down the field. And I'll never forget, there was a debate happening between Greg and somebody sitting next to Greg about whether or not to do that as the ball was snapped. And y'all, there was a split second of absolute stunned silence. I've never heard a crowd that big, that quiet, when they realized, the whole room realized that what Russell Wilson was going to pass. And the guy behind me, I'm not sure if we'll have to edit this or, somebody smarter than me will put this in, said, holy shit, he's throwing the ball. And that was the only, you could hear it in the whole stadium, because it was like, and then there was this eruption of noise because there were so many Patriot fans in that building. It was really 50-50. Patriots fans were loud. There was an eruption of noise, and we just sat there, or stood there at the time. We were all standing. And I don't think anybody around me said a word for a solid minute, as we were all just saying, the hell did I see? I mean, it was such a stunning play call. Pete Carroll will live with that play call for the rest of his life. Marshawn Lynch will live with that play call for the rest of his life. Russell Wilson will live with that play call for the rest of his life. And even Vince Wilfork saying that, hey, I would have run the ball 4 times. It's what we were all thinking. But the biggest part of it, and I think the documentary could have given a little more love here, is there was one time on Friday before the game that the defensive staff went in and said, hey, in this look, this is what happens. And Malcolm Butler had practiced that exact play. And we always talk about preparation for Tom Brady. That defensive staff knew the play could happen And Malcolm Butler knew from that look it was going to happen. The Patriots weren't guessing. They were prepared for it. And that's the most undertold part of the story. It was a good play call because nobody would have expected it to happen. If it works, we're talking about the gutsy play calling. But no, the Patriots staff was better prepared. They got out coached, and that's the reason that the Super Bowl ended that way. I thought that was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And during that last drive, I love that they gave us the inside the NFL sound bites where Pete Carroll was like, "Oh, we got the ball at midfield, 2 minutes, 3 timeouts. This couldn't be easier for you now. I couldn't give you an easier Super Bowl for you to win." And I was watching the recap of this Super Bowl saying, "Oh, just wait for it. Oh, okay, yeah, for sure. We got something for you." And you make a great point, Fitz, because I remember watching the post Super Bowl interviews, and they did practice that play on in practice with Malcolm Butler, where he saw that slant come across and that switch, and Bill Belichick told him if he sees it, he better undercut it like that. So he saw that same look and did not hesitate, and he was like, "I'm just going." So that is situational football, and we've talked about it before in previous episodes, how the Patriots are so good in situational football moments. And when Kurtz made that catch, all Pats fans were thinking, "Man, again, some bull crap catch that's about to shut us down."
Yeah.
When
No,
are we going to have a play that's going to get us over the top? That's going to give us an opportunity. And Brady played lights out in that game. You just knew it. With the way that he lost the other Super Bowl and the way that he's just been chipping away at it year after year, trying to get back to this moment, and to play the way he did, it was just a testament towards his greatness. And that last play, they had 8 run defenders and 3 pass defenders. When you count up the numbers, they had committed completely to the run. They're like, "Yo, we're stopping the run. We don't care. We just have to stop this run." And they threw the ball, and it'll forever go down as one of the most questionable play calls in NFL history. But as Pats fans, we love that Tom Brady gave Malcolm Butler the car for his MVP. I remember that in Pats Nation history, and it was just a play that we remember forever. And that was when Brady said himself at the end of it that he felt like he was improving. He still felt like his best was still ahead of him, and he still had a lot to achieve. And it was just another great year to be a Pats fan and to see that greatness in Bill Belichick and Tom Brady shine in key moments.
And by the way, Scooby, to that, I'm really glad the Super Bowl ended that way. I know this sounds crazy to people because they know that I'm not a Patriots fan. One of the stupidest conversations we had at the time was about whether or not Brady's greatness was suddenly going to be dulled because he lost Super Bowls. Because at the time it was all, "Oh, Joe Montana never lost a Super Bowl. Terry Bradshaw never lost a Super Bowl." This win kept Brady as a winning quarterback. It made him 4-2 in Super Bowls instead of 3-3, right? Like that's a significant difference in the conversation we have about Brady for the next, year while we wait for another Super Bowl. So Victoria, I was actually really happy. Like, in the one sense for me is like, at least I don't have to listen to a bunch of guys now yell about why Tom Brady isn't it, even though he's been in 6 dang Super Bowls.
No, I agree with you. And I remember that game. I was at a Super Bowl party and it was all Pats fans. And I was just living my best life eating chili because that's what I do when I'm watching the Super Bowl. And I remember like, even as Pats fans, like people being like, "This is such a good game. This is an entertaining game. This is a game that's showing Brady coming back." Like it was, yeah, I agree with you, Fitz. Cause it was like, the dude had won 3 Super Bowls and people were like, "Oh, Brady's away from his prime." I'm like, how many people haven't won Super Bowls? Like, how is it that it's this bizarre thing? And it's like, you see it on all different sports where you're like, "Oh, well, they got a silver, they won a gold the day before, but they have a silver today." It's like, it's this weird thing. And so I feel like this was Brady's ascension being like, I'm here to stay, and things are lining up. And the fact that they threw it, like, I think that was just like the little football gods coming down on Brady and being like, "Rise him up. Here you are. Like, here's Tom Brady." And so it was a moment where I think everyone was kind of like, "Brady's our guy." Cause people were kind of like, "Is he? I don't know." And
I still blame sports talk shows, whether it's on TV or radio, for all of this championship obsession, like especially in the NFL. We want to judge quarterbacks by Super Bowl wins. And I constantly look at that and say, y'all, Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl and Dan Marino didn't. And last time I checked, Trent Dilfer is not a better quarterback. No offense, Trent, was never a better quarterback than Dan Marino. Like, I just, it's weird. And this is something that's happened in the last, I think 10 years, where all of a sudden we only wanted to find, Lamar Jackson isn't going to be great until he wins a Super Bowl. And it's like, really? I mean, there's 53 players on each side of this, just on the active roster alone, and 25, 30 coaches. Like, talking about 160 players that have an outcome, a say in the outcome of the game, and we're only going to focus on one. That's just stupid.
Well, it's down to the fact of where they, you see post, championship interviews or post. For my own experience, I remember after I won my gold, they're like, so you think you can do it again? You think you can win another gold medal? I was like, I just won one. Like, that's pretty good. And I'm going to enjoy this. And it's like, you see it every time. Think you can do it next year? You think you could come back and do it next year? And it's like, why does that have to be based on, but I think that goes to our human nature where people get greedy and they want more and they want more and they want more. And it's a situation where it's like, you got to just be in the now essentially. And so
didn't Brady say that?
Yeah. He was like, what are you talking about?
He said that.
Before we go any further, we decided that since Skubie and I tend to favor Tom Brady and the Pats on this show heavily because, well, we're from New England, we needed to bring in someone who could speak on Super Bowl 49 for the Seahawks. So I had a chance to speak with ESPN's very own Matt Ufford, who is a friend of our show, the reason we're all here, and a lifetime Seattle Seahawks fan. While it may be an old wound opened up, I want to speak with Matt about this episode and the Seahawks' gut-wrenching loss to Tom Brady and the Patriots at Super Bowl 49. Matt, I'm so excited to talk to you, not only because you're awesome and the reason we're all here, but because you have a lot of perspective on the Seahawks. So we discussed how crucial it was for Tom and the Pats to win that Super Bowl, but the Seahawks were the returning champs the year before in Super Bowl 48. They disarmed five-time MVP Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos, the highest scoring offense in the league history, winning 43-8. If there was a team to handle Brady, this was the team. But what stood out for you about the 2014 Seahawks, Matt?
They were a lot of fun. Like, the people are going to remember the Legion of Boom defense and Marshawn Lynch. And Marshawn Lynch is like welcome in my home anytime. He's like a family member. I've got a lot of love for that man, both for what he does off the field and just who he is as a person. But I think that, the Legion of Boom, the big four or a big three of Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas, that they got the headlines, but that defense was stacked from top to bottom. And, Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett were a pass rushing duo that really affected the game. And I think Super Bowl 49 is a great example because Michael Bennett was arguably the MVP through the first three quarters. He left with a concussion, and then suddenly it all clicked into place for the Patriots without that pass rush.
Yeah, and I think, I'm the same way about the Seahawks, what Lynch does, on and off the field. But Super Bowl 49 will be remembered for Jermaine Kearse's circus catch and the questionable play calling by Pete Carroll at the end that resulted in the Pats' Malcolm Butler's interception to steal the win. That catch ranks as one of the greatest clutch defensive plays in Super Bowl history. Now, I hate to reopen old wounds, but where were you watching the game and what was your reaction as everything kind of imploded for the Seahawks towards the end?
Oh man, where to start? Like, do you have 20 minutes? I know that we don't have that kind of time here. I was actually in Arizona. I was covering for the game for the outlet that I worked for at the time, and I was sitting next to a diehard Pats fan. I was watching the game on the couch, and the Pats fan next to me had just gone from absolutely like in the dumps because of that miraculous Jermaine Kearse circus catch. Which, quick tangent aside here, it is a shame that the Seahawks lost, not just for me personally and my feelings, but because that catch would have gone down in history with the helmet catch as one of the greatest catches in Super Bowl history. And now it's kind of an afterthought to Malcolm Butler's play. End of my little side tangent there. But yes, so when the interception happened, I fell over like I had been shot. and the Pats fan next to me jumped off the couch and was like, yes, and like dropping F-bombs and like, that's 6, baby. And I just laid on the ground, like curled up in a
You
ball.
actually physically fell over?
Oh yeah, I felt like I just like I had just been shot, just fell right off onto the floor. Hands down, by far and away, the worst moment of my life as a sports fan. Not even close. You know, I think that along with the Seahawks, I love the U.S. men's national soccer team. Them not making the World Cup in 2018 was devastating. It also happened in a moment when the entire world wasn't watching. There weren't 105 million people watching the U.S. miss the World Cup. It wasn't such a big moment. It was bad for me, but like to have like this terrible moment for me be the like just a talking point and a touchstone for everybody who's even
On replay.
likely a sports fan on replay. I have not watched that entire play in the 7 years since it's happened. They've like, it'll come on as a replay and I'll start to see it and I'll just turn away. And I still haven't seen the play from, and I don't want to see it again. I just never, ever want to see it again. I couldn't sleep for like the next 3 nights. You know, I think it broke me as a Seahawks fan that in a similar way that it kind of broke that team as well. Like they just had, there was a lot of psychic trauma to the team that they just weren't the same the next year. And then, you know, I think that whatever chemistry issues there were the following year, that also started to manifest itself in the game continuing to change and Pete Carroll not really changing along with it. You know, the Legion of Boom ended via injury and contract decisions. Just a real bummer. What could have been like an all-time great like team in the annals of history, a dynasty, just snuffed out at the 1 yard line. And by the way, I know you gotta go. You got better things to do, Victoria, but I just want to say,
keep talking.
Passing at the 1 yard line with 26 seconds and 1 timeout on 2nd and 1 or 2nd and goal from the 1. The pass itself is not the problem. The reason to pass is to save the timeout and to give you options of pass or run and keep the defense confused. So the decision to pass when you have Marshawn Lynch is not so terrible in the game script.
Yeah.
It was the result of it, and that maybe going to your 5th wide receiver when the Bill Belichick defense is ready for that play. You know, great play by the defense, but I was ready emotionally for like, if the goal line stand happens, if they don't get it on 4th down, that's something that I could handle emotionally. To go from like 3 chances at the 1, here we go, like my team really might win the Super Bowl, to like, oh no, the game is over right now, was just something, what an emotional kick to the groin and ribs and several more kicks to the abdomen area. Just the sort of thing that makes you fall off the couch.
Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry we had to
terrible moment.
I couldn't imagine, because I was at a Super Bowl party and it was mostly Pats fans just growing up in New England. We had a handful of Seahawks fans and I was generally cheering for the Seahawks. And I remember just everyone looking around like, what just happened? Like how did this? So I couldn't even imagine being a Seahawks, like a diehard Seahawks fan, to be like, how, like the shock factor. I mean, does it ever wear off?
There's something to be said, like, because we now have a data set of like Seahawks fans and now Falcons fans, like who are, you know, forever scarred by 28-3. What I will say, like 28-3 is not anything that I would ever like. I would not want to switch places with a Falcons fan. But I will say that there is something to go from like, we're going to win, and then in one instant, one play, it being the other, no, game over, Patriots win. Whereas like 28-3 unfolds like a slow motion car crash over the course of the 3rd and 4th quarters, so that by the time you get to overtime, if you're a Falcons fan, you know in your heart that you've already lost the game.
Yeah.
Whereas a Seahawks fan, you know, a lifetime of thinking, always suspecting the worst, had been erased by Super Bowl 48 the year before. And the thing that bums me out is that because Super Bowl 48 was a start to finish romp, there was never this moment of like celebration, because by the time the second half kickoff was done, we're like, I think we're gonna win. Like, I don't want to count any chickens, but there's never that one moment. And the loss of Super Bowl 49 is so much worse than the win in Super Bowl 48 that I'm just kind of, I end up being not very grateful for Super Bowl 48, which was a great team and a great game from my perspective. And I think that, you know, another bummer about the Malcolm Butler interception is that entire game was fun from start to finish. Like, there were so many fantastic plays on both sides of the ball by both teams that one play overshadows so much. I look back at the Chris Matthews touchdown with 2 seconds left in the first half, and like, what a ballsy call by Pete Carroll to go for a touchdown instead of kicking the field goal with just 2 seconds left when they got that touchdown. So I try to love the game as a whole because it was a great Super Bowl from start to finish. But yeah, not anything that's fun to revisit.
No, and look, I appreciate your insight, and I'm really sorry we had to take you back to those painful memories, but thank you so much for joining the show, Matt, and hopefully your faith in the Seahawks will be restored very,
no, maybe sometime before I die, but not anytime soon. Thank you.
I'm trying to manifest that out there for you, but thank you, Matt.
I appreciate you, Victoria.
And before we go, it's time to do what we do every week, and we're going to pick our favorite parts. I think we could say a lot of our favorite parts of the show, but Fitz, hit me. What was your favorite part from this episode?
So 2 things. I think hearing Tom talk about, like, man, this can't be it. I think that really related for me because, you know, for all the success I was really proud to have in the music business, I felt that. Like, I looked around one day and I was like, man, this isn't it for me. And for me, the answer was to go to a different industry, obviously. But, you know, I thought that was a really relatable, wow. It was cool to see other people feel that. And then I think, you know, one of the moments that really touched my heart was Richard Sherman at the end of the Super Bowl holding out his hand and just waiting for Brady to take that second and really absorb the win. And then, you know, the love that they shared for each other, respect that they shared for that. I can't imagine if you're Richard Sherman and you weren't on the field for the play that really decided the Super Bowl. And it's so easy in that moment to just be angry. And instead he's like, no, we got beat fair and square. And I respected the hell out of him. Like, that was such a real feelings, emotional moment from 2 players that fought so hard, man. That I thought that was really touching.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Skubie?
That whole battle with Tom Brady and Richard Sherman in the Super Bowl against that defense, and I think we saw a dog side of Tom Brady in what Richard Sherman explained. He said himself he saw a side of Tom Brady that he didn't know. I mean, he was talking crap, he was yelling at them, and then Richard Sherman said that when they played earlier on, Tom Brady said something to their defense, and I love how it seems like there's 2 sides to the story. Richard Sherman thinks Tom Brady was like, "Who are you guys?" And then Tom Brady's like, "I'm not sure if I said that. I can't remember that moment." But it was kind of funny to see that back and forth we'll never really know what was said between those 2, but it fired up that defense. And that's when Richard Sherman had that picture with Tom Brady, the "you mad, bro?" But to have Tom Brady come back in the Super Bowl, fight them, fired up, yelling, and he was like, "Yeah, you mother effers!" Like, you saw Tom Brady cussing, going in.
Yep.
That fire, that competitive fire at that age when people thought that he was too old or coming towards the end of his career, you saw how fired up he was in that Super Bowl and how much he wanted that win. And he refused to lose and instilled his will into that game. And that was definitely my favorite part, because I remember seeing and feeling that energy from Brady. And then to get the behind the scenes look into exactly what he was saying on the field to them and just how he was competing and thinking. And every single time they said every play felt like it was a tough play and catch. Everything was close in this game. Not one person felt comfortable. And every time they cut to the sideline, somebody would say, "Hey, we got 12, bro. We got 12. Tom Brady got us. We got the greatest of all time." And every single time he answered the call.
Yeah. And I For me, I've said it a few times throughout this series, but honestly, the human and real side of Brady is honestly my favorite part. Like, we see the GOAT, we see the legend in the making, but this one quote really, really got me. And that was like, I was like, yes, like we all could have this reminder. So he said, when you're at the top of the mountain, you're like, this can't be it. Then 10 years go by where you get beat up physically, mentally, emotionally, life changes. There's a lot of perspectives you get from things not going your way. And I think what I recognized in 2014 was, man, this is really hard. And there is a lot more to it when it comes to winning. And I think, I was like, we all could probably replay that and listen to that again, because he was at the top of the mountain, but was still like not satisfied. And then a decade goes by where he's going through it. He's in it. And then he's kind of like, there's a lot more to it. And so I think that was in my eyes, I mean, a great reminder to all of us, but I think also the fuel and the continual fuel to Brady's dominance today. Like, you remember the top of the mountain, but you actually remember rock bottom a lot more vividly. And so I feel like when you hit those moments, it's kind of a situation of like, I know what it's like to get to the top, but I remember that low point and I remember that climb to get there. And so that's a great reminder for all of us. And that's how we're going to wrap that show. I'd say we'll wrap it on a little motivation note. Thanks to Brady.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Let's go for it. Thanks
great
for watching. Yeah.
Great comment, Victoria.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I figure I'd close it with a little motivation for all of us, because I think we could all use it. So that's going to do it for us. Thank you for watching After the Arena, presented by Under Armour. He's Skubie. He's Jason. I'm Victoria. Be sure to catch us next week after episode 7 of Man in the Arena.